that's a lie. But she's showing pictures of injuries that the cops who all showed up, 2 sets of cops, they show up, they say, we didn't see anything, right? When she was in the light, we saw clear, we didn't see anything. But then she says, well, I have these pictures to show.
The Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial that just came on went. I think it's about a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing you for the first time ever. I saw you. I watched one of your videos loosely. I didn't know who you was technically, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it was the soccer video in regards to women's soccer. I'm a big football fan. I'm a big I support Arsenal. So
Okay.
It was right in my, it was right there because I really wanted to know what was going on with all this going on. I didn't know who you were. I just watched it and that was it. Moved on.
How'd you like that video?
Huh?
How'd you like that video?
Oh, it was really informative because the funny thing about it is, in the UK we don't talk about things like that. They don't really allow it in the mainstream, like Sky Sports. We have ITV Sport, BBC Sport, all that. They don't talk about the politics regarding football, like where you get this assault cases, all those things, and pay gap problems, all of that. It's more they keep it.
It's about the sport.
Yeah. So when I no other YouTuber blew the lid on it. So when I saw you do it, you were probably the only person giving the information.
Oh wow!
And it was very detailed. It went into the legalities of the matter, weighing up. I didn't even know that the men were actually paying the women.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, wow. So it was eye opening, and I took it at that time, but it was when I watched you on Legal Bites.
Okay.
And I saw your commentary on there, like who you are, and then I was like, wait a minute, it sounds familiar. It sounds familiar. So I went back to my channel. To your channel, and then I saw the videos up there. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm the soccer guy.
I've been here before. So yeah, but yeah, I said all of that to basically ask because there was a lot of narrative going on in regards to LawTube and which you belong to, and it was about how you guys were basically profiting from this trial, and making money off misogyny, all of those things. So I just want to know what you do and why you start your YouTube channel. So I guess I'll open with did you start your YouTube channel to spite Amber Heard?
No, my YouTube channel was open years before I even knew didn't know who she was. No, to be honest with you, when I first started the YouTube channel, I wasn't familiar with Amber Heard. I think I may have watched her in like a movie or something, but she wasn't like an actress where I was like, this is Amber Heard. You know what I'm saying? I just wasn't familiar. I was more familiar with Johnny Depp, which I think most people were. But no, the start of my YouTube channel was about democratizing law, or just being able to explain legal concepts to people. The U.S. soccer video that you saw, I think maybe the one with 4 million views. There was another one I did, almost the exact same video that only had like 1,000 views. My content isn't really, I hate to say, my content isn't really directed to say like I'm right wing or left wing or like this or like that. It's kind of just directed based on the case. The case is in front of me. Here are the facts, and I just kind of like to evaluate the facts and say, okay, this is my opinion based on what I have in front of me. And sometimes that opinion will be pro-right, and sometimes that opinion will be pro-left, and I kind of just. I had to accept the fact that not everyone was going to agree with everything I say.
Yeah.
But I was hoping that if the reasons why I was saying it made sense, and if it was well reasoned, that people would then accept that, hey, even if you disagree with me, the reasons why I believe that, or reasons why I was going that way, was acceptable. And that is how I take every case, and even Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. At the beginning, I actually supported Amber Heard. A lot of people don't realize that. Even on Legal Bites channel, when I first did, I had supported Amber Heard. I believed she was going to win, and I believed Johnny Depp was an abuser. But then obviously the facts and the evidence changed my mind about what I was seeing.
Yeah, like and that's what I think it was you and Hogue. I think it was you and Hogue that were
me, Hogue, and on Civil Law. On Civil Law is another one.
You guys were like, nah, he's not gonna win this. He's not gonna win this.
Nah, he's
and
not,
I think that was the best part about Legal Bites, because she just kept her mouth shut. She already done the case before, so she kind of had a very strong feeling that he might prevail.
Yeah,
she just went like, nope, I'm not gonna say anything. Let's just wait. And watching all of you guys, switch your views. What made you guys believe he wasn't going to win at all? Was it like a legal reason, or was it an emotional connection? What exactly was the reason?
Well, my thought process going into the case was that first, the UK case, you couldn't kind of like just ignore that, right? He had lost in the UK, even though it was against the Sun, but it was kind of the same thing. So it was like, okay, so you've gone to England, where it's easier to win a defamation case than the United States. The United States has a whole bunch of protections. So going through that process and saying, well, he really did lose, and they essentially called him a wife beater. They said, well, there's enough evidence here to suggest that you were a wife beater. Yeah. And that, going into that, then it was kind of like, well, he's got an extremely uphill battle. But even after that, we were still like, okay, what are some of the other things that we can see to make us think that he can prevail? So number one, it was after that UK case, then it was like, okay, what is he actually saying was defamatory? So he was saying that, number one, what she had wrote in an opinion piece was defamatory. Now, as soon as you say opinion and defamation, you're really all the bells should be ringing. Opinions are generally not defamatory, not defamatory, not defamatory, not defamatory. Now, that is not the case that opinions can't be defamatory. But it's like shooting a bullseye, right? That you could say this opinion was defamatory. So that was really, really big, because don't forget, Amber Heard's defamatory content was written in the opinion section of the Washington Post. So that was like, all right, number one. Then it was the actual statements that they were suing for. Yeah. And those statements seem to be true, right? It seemed to be true. She had become, She had become a spokesperson for this, a public spokesperson, and these statements. So in evaluating those statements, I was like, well, those statements, they don't name him, they seem very general, and they do seem opinion based, right? So it was kind of like, if just putting everything together, it seems like it's going to be hard to get over just the pure defamatory piece of it, that these statements are actionably false. Because at one point it's true that she became a spokesperson, or for domestic violence. That actually happened, right? She was for the ACLU. But the underlying defamation by implication, I think this is what we were missing. The defamation by implication, it's a little different in the sense of, it says that you're implying defamatory content versus it actually being defamatory. And in his case, it was implied, right? You were implying the fact that he was a wife beater. And that was enough to get him past the motion to dismiss, because we all thought he would lose at that stage. Yeah. And when he did prevail and they were going to present evidence, then it became the point of, okay, you're going to have an evidentiary hearing, a trial about this particular stuff. Yeah. And he would essentially have to prove that in their very toxic relationship, he didn't abuse her at all. And it just was like, based on everything that you've heard, it just didn't seem like that was possible. Yeah. It seemed like, especially with the therapist notes, it seemed like they both got as good as, like the therapist said, Amber Heard gave as good as she got, and Judge, he gave as good as she got, and he pushed her and headbutted her and all this other stuff. There was just so much where it was like clear, where it was clearly like kind of on essentially stating that Amber Heard didn't really have to prove anything. She just had to just come in and say like, "Hey, we gave as good as we got." I do want to make it very clear though that during the trial, the thing that changed all of our minds was the evidence that was presented. The evidence that was presented, I think a lot of people don't understand why it changed our mind. But for me personally, the change was, I don't believe Johnny Depp won that case. I think Amber Heard lost it. And I think there's a distinction here. Yeah. Amber Heard lost that case for, I think, one particular reason. Because she wanted to make herself seem innocent while making him seem guilty. And the way she could have won that case was to just admit that they were both doing messed up stuff to each other. Right? She gets on a stand, and instead of saying he was the abuser, he did all this stuff didn't happen, I was the victim and he was just chasing me, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if she gets up there and she says, you know what, I was horrible to him, he was horrible to me, we were in a toxic relationship and I got the hell out of there, but you know, it just was what it was. I think that goes over with a jury, then you get a wash, right? And she wins a tie. She wins a tie in that situation. But I think the narcissism started kicking in. Yeah. And I want people to believe that he's the abuser and I'm the innocent victim. Yeah. And when you tell that big of a lie, on top of all the other lies, then you lose your case. And I think that's what happened. I think Amber Heard lost her case rather than Johnny Depp winning that case.
We didn't really go much into your background, but
sure.
What area of law did you practice in? And are you still practicing?
Sure. So when I first got out of law school, I went right to the DA's office. So I was an ADA doing all that stuff, and I was doing criminal defense. Criminal prosecution. Then I got offered my dream job, and my dream job was I was offered to become a college professor at the law school, and they doubled my salary and gave me the summers off. And where the DA's office, where I had to work 50 hours a week, at the law school, I had to work 25 hours a week. So I'm making double the money, had to put in half the time, and get 3 months in the summer off. It was like, it's the no-brainer. And it was, so they gave me a 2-year contract. So I was like, I'm out of here for the DA. So I gotta go. So I moved to the law school and was a professor, and did that for about for 2 years, which was a fantastic experience. So then after that 2 years was up, it was right about the time COVID was hitting. So it was like the end of 2019, I decided to start my YouTube channel. But I had already had a YouTube channel because like a lot of people have a YouTube channel and you just watch videos and the comments. So you just create an account. So my account was like from 2014. But then I said, you know what, I'm going to actually start producing content on this channel. I started with the 500 subscribers. And the reason why I chose to do YouTube and private practice was because while I was at the law school, for my classes, I felt that it was dumb that the students had to physically come into class and sit through my lectures. So after I would give my lecture, the students would, let's say you missed a day, if you were sick, then you'd have to get notes from somebody else and this. And I'm like, we have technology, right? I can just film myself doing the damn class. And now you don't have to depend on someone else's notes or whatever, and then at a point I was like, well, even if you're in a class, guess what? You don't have to take notes in the class. If I film it, it just sends you the lecture, right? It's just PowerPoints and me talking. And if you have any questions about anything, you could just contact me, send me an email and stuff like that, So what I started doing was literally putting my reviews and things of that nature from the class that I was teaching online. And that was like a game changer because I had done one on constitutional constructs and just how the Constitution was developed and how it's put together.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That sounds so interesting.
I didn't think it would be interesting because it was for the class, but for some reason, usually I would make those videos unlisted to just give it to the class because I didn't want for public consumption. But for some reason, that video went public, and next thing I know, I had like 1,000 viewers, and I'm like, who the hell's watching this video?
What I know about you so far, like from seeing all of your Twitter feed and all that's happened, it's really inspiring to see how you built it up. So we've firmly established, especially with what the media narrative has been saying, that you guys just cashed in and just pivoted your channels. The ever so great fact checker, Taylor Lorenz has been saying that pivoting your channel. I'm glad that you gave such a concise breakdown of what your channel had to go through, what you were, how you had how you had to reinvent the channel, and to get it to where it is today. The media narrative around this trial has been very interesting to see unfold after the verdict. The popular narrative is how defamation cases is now being used to silence victims. And to the layman, someone that doesn't know anything about the law, I wouldn't blame them actually for even believing that could actually be a real possibility. The main thing that they always report is that abusers use it as a tool to sue anyone that would speak about the abuse that they have suffered, and that way they will have to pay money to go through litigation and
essentially defamation is I'm saying something that is false and that's going to harm your reputation. It's interesting because defamation isn't only for these particular cases. Defamation is for anything, right? Like even with my lawsuit with Christopher Boozy, people fail to realize defamation has its place in society because, let's say, if you are innocent and someone comes and says you did this, like, so let's say if a woman comes and claims that I did something to her inappropriate, and then she goes to the news media, and she goes to news media and she says, hey, Nate did this, and I lose my job, I lose my career, I may lose my wife and my kids, right? They I may lose all that, and then eventually it's found out that she was lying. Then what would be my recourse, right? My criminal charges will be dropped, but what would be my recourse, right? Should I be able to sue her for all that damage that she's done to my career and my life? And that's what defamation is for, right? It's for saying that that you've harmed me in this way, unethically, and now I get to respond to that. So now, does that mean there are going to be people who use it in a manner that is incorrect, or of course there is, right? And there's a form of defamation called slap suits. Now, and that's what I think people are talking about when they talk about like the abusers are doing this to other people. They call them slap suits, and slap suits is strategic lawsuits against public participation. That's what SLAP, that's the acronym SLAP. And essentially what that means is that I'm suing you. I know my defamation claim is no good, but I'm still suing you just to make you go through the process, just to make you hire an attorney, just to make you do that, just to make you do this. And most states have laws to say, okay, you can't do that, right? Unless you have so we'll evaluate your case to see if you're just making these claims just to stop the person from talking. Yeah. And a lot of times they'll do that. So, for instance, John Oliver, he went through one. I don't know if you were to do last week tonight. He actually went through a very interesting slap case, in which he was reporting on an oil company, and he only used the facts of the case. Right? He says, "Okay, here's the facts, here's the stuff," and he only presented the facts in the lawsuit. So the defendant in that lawsuit didn't like the negative publicity, so he sued John Oliver, but when the state saw, the judge saw that, hey, this lawsuit really didn't have any merit to it. The only thing it had was the fact that they didn't like what Jon Stewart was saying. So they dismissed that case early on, and Jon Stewart wouldn't, he didn't have to go out any money. And with slap suits, the defendant, which not the plaintiff, if the plaintiff is found to be a slap suit, the plaintiff may actually even be on the hook for the defendant's legal fees if it's that egregious. So there are some protections, but not every state has that protection. But I think in the particular case with Amber Heard, the problem is that there's always been this theory in both criminal law and civil law where we will ignore false allegations because they are so minimal in the overall scheme. So you may have heard the stats like 98% of women who say they've been assaulted are telling the truth, right? Or something like that. It's like some ridiculously high number. 98% is
9%, 95, I think.
90, 92, 90, whatever, but it's usually a high number, right? Say 9 out of 10, just to be fair. So the thought process was, even in criminal law, is that even if a woman lies about being assaulted or anything like that, it's best to not prosecute her, to not hold that person accountable, because that prosecution may stop other women from now coming forward and saying, hey, this happened to me. Because even if it's true, they may have a fear that if they can't prove it's true, then they'll get prosecuted too. And that's honestly not even the case. That's poor thinking, but that's the way they're thinking. And now in the civil context, that's what that thinking is. Like, hey, if I say this happened with this powerful man and he could sue me and win a defamation claim. But I think what people fail to realize that in both situations, even in the criminal context or in the civil context, the person suing you, right, or if the DA is going to charge you, they have to prove their case. So if you're a woman who's lied about this, they still have to prove their case. So generally, let's say if a woman comes and says a man did this, and it's a he said, she said case, and nobody can prove either way, right? He can't win a defamation suit because he has to prove that was a lie. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm in a room with the young lady, and we come out that room. She comes out the room and says, I did this. I grabbed her and touched her inappropriately, or that type of thing, right? And then I come out and say, none of that actually happened. She's lying. And there's no one, and generally, to be fair, most sexual assault cases and those type of cases, that's what actually happens, right? It's usually people in intimate scenes where it's really the victim and the perpetrator together and no one else is around, right? People aren't sexually assaulting people in crowds, right? That they generally happen in isolated areas.
Yeah.
So if that happens, so a lot of this is just he said, she said. So in that case, there's no evidence except he's claiming one thing, she's claiming another thing. What do you do? Right? What do you do? So the problem is that I think we've gotten to a point where we said tie goes to the person making the allegations. So if you're a woman making the allegations, believe her.
Yeah.
And then have all these consequences to the person, to the man generally, who is being accused. Yeah. So they'll be accused. Versus, what evidence can you provide that this happened? Because in our legal system, tie goes to the runner. And what that means is that if it's a he said versus she said case, and both people are credible and there's no evidence to support the claims, you have to prove the claims. You can't assume the claims are true. So even in that perspective, if a woman claims that this happened and it didn't, in that example with the room, if we go into the room and a woman claims this happened, and we go into the room and I claim it didn't happen, and she goes in, they try to prosecute me and they fail, and then I try to now sue her for defamation. I can say she's lying, but then they're going to have me do the same thing. I got to prove those. And how can I prove that she's lying? Because it's only me and her.
Yeah.
Right. He said, she said. So that's kind of the way the system works. But now what proponents of this are saying is that men who are wrongly accused and can prove that they are wrongly accused, like that, Johnny Depp he proved that he was wrongly accused. Even with that proof, you should not be able to recover because some other woman may not want to tell her story. Unfortunately, if this has happened to you, you tell your truth, and if you can't prove it or he can't prove it, I don't think you're going to have a problem. But if you go and lie, like sometimes, like a lot of times situations happen. I've been involved in many cases where women have straight up lied about the assault, and at one point, you don't know who's telling the truth, but there's been times where there was a camera there. Yeah. There was a camera that showed that the person was lying, right?
Wait, I remember you telling a story around this. Actually, I was watching one of your videos. Streams. It was a woman at a police station.
No, it was with me. It was with me. It happened to me when I was in uniform. I was at a post, and a young woman she was trying to get into the building or something like that. It was something like this. She was trying to get into the building, but there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And she didn't have the right identification or whatever. So I was like, well, listen, unless you have the right identification, it's a no-go, right? It's just like anything. You can't get into you. But she had, she was like, she really needed to get in, this. And I'm like, sure, if you have to, but unless you have the proper identification, you can't get into the building. So she started screaming and yelling and ran away. So later in the day, we got a complaint that this woman said that I had, been rude to her. So, I was like, okay, you're being rude. But then she had gone into saying, I had done some other things and, maybe it harassed her and pushed her around, and leered at her and all this other crazy stuff. So, I was like, none of that happened. So, and it was weird because she didn't know that we had cameras there. So she goes up to make the complaint. And she's crying and in tears and, oh my God, this happened to me. And this guy was so mean to me, blah, 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 blah. And I remember my boss, he took the complaint, did all that and said, and then at the end of it, he said, well, hold on, I want you to look at something, right? Because this is this. And he put the camera on. He said, well, I want you to see, because we have it on camera. Yeah. And you've never seen someone's tears and stuff dry up so fast. And, oh, there's a camera there? Yeah. There was a camera there. Let me show you what happened. Oh, you said that he pushed you. You said that he did this. Well, he never came from behind that desk. And you can see he's always been, matter of fact, he's only talking to you. He's pointing to you. None of this stuff has happened. None of the stuff that you said happened. Matter of fact, there's so many other people even around. Why, are you, but the thing is, this woman had now written a false police report. She had now written a false police report, right? And now it's like, we could charge you with this because obviously what you're saying isn't true, right? But now, if you charge that woman, then the thought process is, well, somebody who it did happen to may be afraid to come forward. But now what about me? Because if this woman, if there was no camera there, I would have this report on my record, right? Because she had recanted the report and everything. So it was like it never happened. But I would have this report on my record. I'd have to go to maybe some training classes and all this other stuff where this thing actually never even happened. But, but that's the point where the power of just the allegation. She thought she could just make the allegation but it didn't happen. So what I mean to say by this is that I think the way the system is now keeps everyone honest. Because if you're going to say this stuff happened, and if I can prove it didn't, then you are in trouble. Yeah. But if you can prove it did, then I'm in trouble. So that's the way the system works.
Yeah, and it's very interesting how that experience actually speaks to one hoax that did happen. I'm pretty sure that you know which one I'm referring to. It's so similar, it's unreal, because the only reason why it wasn't defamation, so it's definitely out of the scope. But it's just very interesting how the only reason why he got arrested and even spent time in prison, I'm talking about Justice Smollett, was because he filed a police report. That's the only reason. And so when you look at cases like this, like the Justice Sommelier case, and the Amber Heard Johnny Depp case, of course they are very different in terms of defamation, etc. And the other one was criminal, but the idea behind it, in terms of if you were to charge and bring this case forward, it would set back, the true perpetrators, the true victims of these cases. But in the case of Justice Sommelier, that wasn't necessarily the talking point, so to speak. I mean, as the judge was, sentencing him, and letting him know that his actions were wrong, and the people that it could affect, I didn't get the impression that he was worried about somebody else not coming forward with a hate crime story, so to speak, because when you really think about it, there is an inherent nature that if you're lying about a certain thing, other people, whatever demographic you belong to, whatever gender you belong to, whatever, they will suffer as a result, because everyone, is human nature. It's like, okay, it's like a boy who cried wolf. It will always happen. What I'm trying to figure out from you is, or at least ask, is basically, how how do you guys really like when I say you guys, I mean the police and
Mhm.
the prosecutors, etc. How are cases like this approached? How do you guys thread that line?
Well, number one, the only way is that you don't look at the cases as a generalized thing for all of society. You have to look at each case as an individual scope. And what you do is you evaluate the evidence of that particular incident. So what happens is in a lot of these cases, they want you to act on your prejudice. Men are generally the abusers, women are generally the victims. And if you act on those prejudices, then you get to a particular outcome that people who advocate that want. But generally what prosecutors and people in our business do is to say, okay, what are the factors in this particular case, right? Were these people together? What can we prove and what do we not know? And by doing it in that particular way, taking each individual instance and essentially putting it in isolation and saying, what can we prove about this particular case? Nothing else. All this other stuff is nonsense. We just want to find out what happened between these two people. Then you can then evaluate whether there's a case here or there's not cases here. And I've been involved in cases where these were legitimate. Yeah. I've been involved in cases where where there was one homeless guy who was walking down the street, and the summertime here in New York, women dress very I don't want to say scantily clad, but it's scantily clad. But you have the right to do that, and they should not be harassed doing that. But they had this homeless guy who was mentally ill. Guess what he was doing? Women would walk down the street. He would come up behind them and fill them up and then run and do that type of thing, right?
That's
now,
wild to me.
I know it's insane to even say, but that's what happened, and we had to catch that guy. We had to catch that guy. So he had done that like 4 or 5 times in that same day, and we eventually caught him and arrested him. But something like those things, number one, are rare. They don't really happen a lot. But the second thing is that situations like that do happen. So we don't want to throw out the good with the bad. What we want to do is that in each and every situation, if we know wolves do exist, as you say, but how do we know this guy's a wolf, or is this guy being portrayed as a wolf? And the only way you can just differentiate that is by the evidence that's put forward. Yeah. And a lot of times too, think about it this way. Because a lot of times for us, in law enforcement, or even as attorneys, we don't know these people. We don't know the backgrounds. Like, we don't know these people as, who they really are. Yeah. So you have a woman or even a guy. You have a woman come in and say, this happened. You have a guy that come in and this happened. A lot of the times, neither one of them have any criminal records. Neither one of them have anything. And it's just like, who do you believe? What evidence do you have? Well, this happened in a room. Okay, so this happened in a room. Can you tell us more happened? Did you ask him? That nothing ever happened. This. Is there any evidence? Is there, maybe the physical evidence? How do you prove it? Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's unfair to just take someone's word for it when there's no evidence to support it. And there's on the other side, it's unfair to just ignore their allegations because they're making them. Mm-hmm. So the law says the only way we break this tie, because we know there are people who try to portray people as false wolves, is that you have to be able to prove it. And if you can't prove it, then there's really nothing we can do at this particular time. Yeah. And it may be a quirk in society, or maybe this thing, but unfortunately, how else would you, unless you're saying that we have to treat the person as they're guilty and just take allegations for what they are, then that's a whole different story. And I think, and we've seen that actually play out in a lot of situations, like with Bill Cosby, for instance, America's Dad. It took 40 women to say this happened to them before people believed that it happened to them, because of his reputation. He had a great reputation. He had never been, no one even thought that anything like this was even close to happening, right? But now we know it obviously did. Yeah. Because in society, we need more than just her word. Think about this. If it's just Bill Cosby versus one person, would anybody have believed it? Yeah. Right? Yeah, but now you get 100 women. Okay. All of them can't be lying, because now it becomes like, now each person becomes evident. Now, it's pretty sad that it has to happen to so many different people, But the fact of the matter is, unless you can we have reading minds, or unless we can do true lie detectors, we can tell this person's obviously telling a lie.
Yeah.
The system is flawed because there's no absolutes.
Yes.
So in evaluating whether somebody's telling the truth, unless you can show there's a pattern of behavior or something like that, then we're kind of stuck with the system we got. And let's not understand, this is the best system in the planet, I think, but we're stuck with the system we got. And it does, with all its flaws, I think, unfortunately, we have to let some who are guilty go, because some of those people who are innocent will be trapped up in there too, right? It's better to let 5 guilty go than to make 1 innocent suffer forever, right? Yeah. And that's the way the system is built. Understanding that, and remember, the system knows there are people who are guilty that will be freed, because in an imperfect system, that's what happens. But you try to limit those who are guilty to get out, and those who are free to be put in. That's what the system is designed to do.
When people are saying things like these things are happening behind closed doors, we weren't really there, all of those things, I personally understand is like some kind of a fallacy to try and defend someone that they had already invested their time believing. But is there some truth to that
of
the
course
system it might be robust to a level, but it can't necessarily place us at the scene of the crime? So
of course, it
can't necessarily build it can build a reasonable picture, but not the full story, so to speak. So is there a deficit here that had gone against Amber Heard in this case?
Well, all right, so initially you had said, Amber, we're talking about 2 things. So the first thing we mentioned was about the evidence, right? Yes. Amber Heard presented evidence, right? And the second one is that, what was the second thing that you said?
The second thing was more of the talking points in regards to us not being there at the scene. We're not in their relationship. We don't know the date, etc. So yeah.
So I'll take the second one first, right? Okay. I'm going to blow your mind. What percentage of crimes do you think are actually prosecuted or stopped?
In my opinion, I think a lot of plea deals are struck a lot. So I don't think a lot of cases make it to. No,
I'm talking about just people who are. I'm just talking about crimes that are committed that people are arrested for, to even go to this. Like how many crimes are actually brought to the system?
No. I think it's a lower number. I think no. I think it's like 60%. I'll say 60%. 67.
No, you're right. You're probably less than 20%. Yeah, maybe, and likely probably less than 10% of all crimes that are actually prosecuted, not even prosecuted, arrested for.
Yeah.
Right. Just think about it. Think about all the crimes that are committed every day. Prostitution, all like there's a whole bunch of crimes being committed now that people are never going to see any justice for. Right. And so the percentage of crimes that are actually arrested and brought to account for are a small percentage of the overall crimes that are committed.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about a small percentage so we have a large group of crimes that we know are being committed, but only a small percentage are actually being brought forward. Yeah. So in that case, we know that there's this imbalance, right? There's a lot of women who have these things happen. That's sort of the Me Too movement, right? All these women are saying, hey, this happened to me, but we never reported. We never did this. We never redid this. So we're talking about such a small percentage of all of this stuff that's actually done. So I think that, so you're saying, well, you're down behind the 8 ball. Well, that's just essentially, that's the way our society is. Not all crimes are, now if we had cameras everywhere and record everything, then there would be a different, but we just don't. Yeah. We just don't. So we're talking about a very, very small percentage of the incidents that actually occur that are criminal, that are actually even brought to account. Yeah. Now, the second thing is the talking point from, like, I think Amber Heard's crew is that she provided evidence, but it's never about providing evidence. It's about the quality of the evidence you're providing. So, for instance, back to our analogy about me being a billionaire. I'll say I'm a billionaire, and I say, here's my credit card. Does that prove that I'm a billionaire?
No.
Or if I can, or if I bring a piece of paper and I can write, I can write you a check. Hey, here's a check I got that says that somebody gave me for $1 billion, and I can make the check out myself, right? So it's not so anybody can present evidence, but it's the quality and the evaluation of that evidence, and that's what juries are for. Juries evaluate the evidence and say, well, does this evidence? So Amber Heard's testimony, for instance, that you made, that was evidence, very strong evidence too, in her favor. Right. And the other witnesses, you had a whole other witnesses that also testified. So in evaluating the evidence in that particular case, and just the Amber Heard case, you had her saying, for instance, A, B, C, and D happened. But then Johnny Depp brought 20 people who said, hey, A, B, C, and D didn't happen. So now she's presented her testimony. Hey, I never did this. And then Johnny Depp has his witnesses, his doctors, everybody says, no, it did happen. And you know what happens? The jury says, well, do we believe her lone testimony saying that this happened? Or do we believe the security guard, the doctor, Johnny Depp, and all the people who were there who said it didn't happen?
Going back to the evidence point, she did have photos and also audios. How would these be weighed up? What usually go through in a jury's mind,
Well, I think the one misnomer is that evidence is never used in isolation. Like there's just one piece of evidence that the evidence is usually used together, and it tells a story, right? Because each side is telling a story. Yeah. So each side presents its evidence and tells a story, right? One side tells a story, the second side tells a story. So Johnny Depp's story was, I didn't do it. But his evidence alone, like let's say if Johnny Depp went up there and said everything and just testified, he was the only person that testified and said, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, and that was it. He loses, right? He loses. So if it's just him,
there's a chance you get beaten up by the wolves.
Exactly. He gets up there, Amber Heard gets up there, tells a story, and he loses. So what you need is now you need the aggregate of all the evidence together to see. Well, she's telling people I gave the money away. So it first starts with credibility. How credible is this person, right? Do I believe this person is telling me the truth? Because that's really the bar that the jury goes, because they determine witnesses' credibility. So Johnny Depp gets up there, he tells the story. They try to push him around and saying some things, but is he telling you? But he wasn't really caught in any real major lies, right? He's caught in some issues were problematic, but it wasn't really just major lies, right? Then Amber Heard tells her story, and she was caught in major lies, and a lot of people don't realize she changed her story in the middle of the trial.
That he was hitting you in 2012, though. Is that right?
He was hitting me in 2012. He just took a break in the middle.
Oh, shit. His arms got tired.
She had given one version of what happened. Then they went on break, and she figured out that, hey, that wasn't effective. So she came back, and then they told a whole separate version of what happened. Now, if you're a juror trying to evaluate someone's credibility, they've told you one story they'll never forget. And then they come back and say, well, when I told you that stuff last week, I actually made a mistake. I'm telling you something different. But it even goes deeper than that, because she said that story in the UK trial. She had been saying that story, she said, the privacy, for like almost 3 years. And then she goes and she changes that story in the middle of the trial. So then you say, okay, so one person has been consistent all the way through, and this person is changing their story as we speak right here in front of us. Yeah. So now it's a credibility issue. Do you believe her or do you believe him? Then you go to, okay, well, what supporting evidence do they have for their stories? Because they're both telling different stories. But supporting evidence, one person here's the security guard who was there when this thing happened. It didn't happen. Here are the cops who were there when she says that they called the cops because she was beat up. Did she have any physical injuries? The cops said no, those injuries were not there. That's a lie. But she's showing pictures of injuries that the cops who all showed up, 2 sets of cops, they show up, they say we didn't see anything, right? When she was in the light, we saw clear, we didn't see anything. But then she says, well, I have these pictures that show. Okay, well, who's lying? Are the Johnny Depp lying? The cops have to be lying. The doorman has to be lying too. Everyone now has to be lying. So, but that's what starts happening. Then the finger cut off industry. She says this happened, but then you got this person, you got this person. So at a point, Amber Heard's testimony became refuted, not just by Johnny Depp, but by just everyone else who was telling their version of events. Yeah. That's why I keep saying Amber Heard lost the trial, because she could have easily copped to all that. And she could easily say, hey, listen, I gave as good as I got. I wasn't perfect in this relationship. But this is where it went to. So the problem is that Amber Heard's, I think, fans want to pretend that just because she had one picture, that is the end all be all of everything. But to ignore all the other discrepancies, when on the other side, their narrative and their evidence matched everything else. All the witnesses, even some of her witnesses, verified their side of the story. So at the end of the day, in evaluating their claims, then it comes to the point where now who do you believe, right? Because the jury doesn't know these people. Yeah. Well, who can we believe? Do we believe him or do we believe her? And then the crux of it is and that's why you also saw in that trial, they brought up things that didn't have anything to do with them, but just to show that she lied about even the most minor things. I gave away the $7 million to charity. Go on TV. I gave it to charity. I gave it to charity. I gave it to charity. Here's the ACLU. I wanted nothing. But when it came down to the truth, well, you were telling people that, but you didn't give any money to charity. Oh, well, I used pledge and donate reciprocally, synonymously. Well, no one else does that, right? But instead of her saying, but now the way she could have easily gotten around that was, I intended to give all that money away. But the thing about it is that financially, I figured out I couldn't do it. So I kept the money. And I was embarrassed to tell people I didn't give it to the thing. But as a victim, what else could I have done? Now the fact that I financially needed the money means that I wasn't abused. If that's what you're saying, Camille, then okay, I didn't give the money away. Yeah. So yes, I didn't give the money to charity. So now that means that he didn't abuse me. Is that what you're saying? And then now that becomes now a big issue too. Now it's something that you forget. Yeah. Right? Okay, it's a wash.
Yeah.
But now but because she tried to fight it and didn't want to just admit it, now it became a part of her credibility. Can we trust her because she doesn't even want to tell us the truth on things that are obviously true?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting as well how you brought up even the stories matches her friend's stories, because I think even one of our witnesses, Christina Sexton, was saying that Johnny was cutting himself with the bottle, and no one else has been saying the bottle except for Johnny. Not even Amber was saying that Johnny was cutting himself with the bottle. And the funny part was Sexton was saying, Amber told me this. I want to talk about her team for a second, because there were two moments that I noticed, I'm pretty sure everyone noticed in the trial, that it was in regards to the famous two pictures and also the December 15 pictures in regards to the room being the exact same thing. And she was trying to say it was the metadata. In a criminal case, I can't see a reasonable DA even making that kind of mistake. Is that actually a mistake? Like from a legal team sort of, or was she really pushing to have these two pictures in there so that she can make a narrative out of it? Like I'm struggling to understand how you can try and convince a jury member who doesn't know anything about this relationship, how you can look at these two pictures and be like, they're the same, but this one was taken in a different lighting, and we had to stop the picture and we turn the light on, and like how? So
and every strand of hair is exactly the same, and they're like, no, these are the same pictures.
Like, was it? Do you think our team was incompetent, or they just had a bad client to work with? Like,
well, no, I don't think the team was in. I don't think the team was incompetent. What I do think is that the team, sometimes their client wanted the I'm innocent, and I think Rottenborn was smart enough to say that that's not going to work, right? Because you could tell in his arguments it wasn't about she's innocent, it was about this. This happened, and this is just not enough. Yeah. But I think. When it came to Elaine was what the she's innocent piece. And that's the piece that I think you had to give up to win. and that they did not want to give that up.
Yeah.
And the thing with the pictures and things of that nature, those are mistakes. Those are mistakes that hurt, right? And you could have easily chalked that up to, oh, that was just, just like with me with making thumbnails. Sometimes I make a thumbnail and one picture comes out darker than the other, but they're the same picture, right? It's like, okay, so this one's a little darker. We made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
We're not perfect. All this stuff can be chalked to mistakes. But the thing is that the if one mistake is one thing, but when you compound them on all these mistakes, and all these mistakes goes to your credibility, then it's like at a point, it's like, are these really now mistakes, or are they indicative of something more sinister? And again, the jury doesn't have to. I don't think the jury believes everything Johnny Depp said, nor do I believe they didn't believe everything that Amber Heard said, right? But what I do think they figured is that taken together, and I think even when the claim she won, because I think a lot of people fail to remember she won a claim. She won one of her claims, and she got $2 million for it. In winning her claim, they did believe her. But in the claim they believed for her, she had evidence to back up everything that she said. Now, and think about this, because people are like the jury was unfair. The jury was extremely fair. Listen to this. When the claim that she won was Johnny Depp's attorney had said that she had staged the crime scene and done all this, right? And there was absolutely no evidence. So you know what you did? They had the camera, they had the police come, they had all this, they had everything, right? It wasn't staged. They called them, they did this. Nothing was staged. One of the cops said, I went there, I looked at her and I was gone. The other one said, I looked there, I didn't see anything, and I was gone. So nobody ever said I saw stuff broken up on the floor. Nobody said it was staged, right? So they said, yeah, by you saying that it was staged and all this stuff, that was false, because the evidence that we see from the body camera, from the cops who were there, from the witnesses who were there at the scene, they didn't say that it was, there was nothing there. So we believe what she's saying in that instance. But on these other instances, we don't believe it.
Oh, this is interesting. So the way that the case was set up, this is very interesting. The way you put that, the way you broke that down. It seems to me that the way that this so if the police did say we went to the house and we searched the whole place and we did find broken glass, we did find all of these things, not wine on the wall, all those things. We found all of that. If they had said that, we found that, well, now you're saying that she would have lost the claim, because that was exactly what Adam's statement was. And
Yes, I think she could have lost that claim, because that would have been just an opinion. They staged that. They set that up. Yeah. It does two things. It disproves that there was this fight that she was saying happened for this, right? That we were fighting and we were beating up, right? But then it also disproves Waldman's claim that they staged it.
Yeah.
Because the cops go in and there's no evidence that anything was staged. So if he doesn't say things were staged, then you don't have a problem. But since he said it was staged, and they said, well, there's no evidence of the broken glass and all this stuff, you're saying she staged something, but there's no evidence that, all the evidence that you're saying was staged wasn't there. Boom, you're done.
That's a legal conundrum and a half. That is
but it shows you the jury is being fair.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm trying to say.
Because all the evidence, because she said, what was Amber's claim? I didn't stage it. And they said, well, based on the evidence that we see, you didn't stage it.
Is foreign shopping a thing? Because
of course,
yeah. So it's brought up. But can you just pick any state you want to go to and basically just say, in your case, you have Boozy that lives in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he lives in New Jersey.
Can you now decide? You know what? It is a lot easier to sue him in Maryland. There's no anti-slap there. It's really weak. So let's go there. And can you do that?
No. Well, two things. To sue someone.
It depends. Like lawyers say that a lot.
Well,
it depends.
No. Well. In this case, no. It would be impossible, because Maryland has no relationship to the claims, right? So, so for a state to have jurisdiction or authority, people like to call it jurisdiction, but I like to call it authority, because authority is an easier term. But the court has to have authority over the defendant. So for instance, if someone sues you in Thailand, how can the courts in Thailand force you to go over there to Thailand to fight the case, right? It's like, you're here, and you don't have any connections to there or whatever. They're not going to come and force you to go over there to Thailand. So what happens is that in this case, generally, if you're suing a defendant, the court has to have some type of authority over the defendant. Now you get that authority in a couple of different ways. Either the defendant lives there, so if the defendant lives at that place, then the court automatically has authority. You live here. The second way it happens is through what's called this long arm jurisdiction, but I'm not going to don't have to go into detail for that. But the other way is that if you commit your tort or your offense in the state. So, for instance, let's say if I go to Maryland, if me and Boozy were in Maryland and he defamed me in Maryland, even though he lives in New York, I could still file my case against him in Maryland, right? Or what I would do is I can file my case against him in New Jersey, and then they would apply Maryland law because we're saying, everything happened in Maryland. So you have those type of things that.
Is that what you meant by long arm jurisdiction?
Yeah, long arm jurisdiction is when you're suing someone out of the jurisdiction because they've committed some offense within the jurisdiction. So that allows you to reach out, reach out and grab them and bring them back in.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right.
Yeah. So a lot of times with driving that happens where you'll have an accident in like Florida. Yeah. And then, but you'll be from New York, so you'll fly back to New York, and the long arm jurisdiction will say, well, we have jurisdiction over you because you came into our state and committed this act, and now we have jurisdiction over you because you did this here. Yeah,
that's very interesting because a lot of people don't actually know that the Washington Post headquarters is actually is actually in where is it? Oh, damn, I just forgot.
Virginia. It's in Virginia.
Not the headquarters. It's in Washington. So
yeah, where they actually published the statements. So they published her defamatory statements in Washington.
Yeah, yes.
I didn't watch it in Virginia.
It was actually proven to be in Virginia because that's where the servers literally the servers to run the website publication or etc. is actually in Virginia.
Correct.
The headquarters is in Washington, which goes to what you were saying in regards to the injury being committed.
Yes.
It was technically in 3 different jurisdictions that he could have picked from, and all of them was weak for anti-slap. So I mean, if anything, anyone can pick from this case, in my opinion, is. If you're gonna write an article that might be defamatory, maybe look at where it's located,
where it's gonna be published at, right? Yeah, because then you can be good. Next thing you know, you're dragged into court. Yeah, so form nonconvenience. It's another weird one. So that happens again in traffic cases a lot. Yeah. So let's say me and somebody else is from New York, and we get in a car accident, and against someone else, and now we're back up here in New York. But in Florida, that's where all the pictures are, the law enforcement officers, the hospital records, everything is in Florida. But the only thing that's up here in New York is just me and the other guy. So you can get the case dismissed for form nonconvenience because you can say all the stuff that you need to prosecute the case is in Florida. Yeah. So go to Florida and prosecute the case because it's just easier. So this is an inconvenient form. So that's what she was making the argument. Yeah. That this form is inconvenient. But the problem is that the tort actually happened here. So it was kind of like a reverse form nonconvenience argument where she was saying, well, even though the car crash happened here in Virginia, we should go to California because all the witnesses and stuff are in California for this. But then the response was, hey, no, this is where the car crash happened. So that was a fight.
Going back to the narrative around the verdict, and I guess we'll kind of end it here. Because it goes into the unsealed documents, and these documents were really, really recycled and thrown out. Do you know much about the reporting around this?
The unsealed documents?
Yeah. So
I've read most of them. To be honest with you, because Andrea Burkhart, who's fantastic. So I read a lot of them.
Yes, like they were also reporting a lot of the details from the unsealed documents, like for example, what the strategies that was going into to keep certain evidence out, the motions in limines, and they were reporting it, in my opinion, really irresponsibly. The reason why I want to talk about this part is the understanding behind looking at those documents and whether it proves anything? Does it prove that Amber was even more abused or less abused, or does it prove?
Well,
what's the significance of unsealed documents?
All right. So the sealed documents, what they were, why they were sealed is because you want to keep them out of the public view and want to keep them away from the jury, right? So it's like you were sealing them because they're private and stuff. So eventually, after the trial's over, then it's like there's no, the reason for us sealing them was for this reason. But now the public, because now you've given them to a public court, the public has a right to know because the court works for us. So by putting them out, the one thing that it showed was the extent of Amber and Johnny, what they wanted to keep out. So, for instance, Johnny had a lot of arrests in the past and things of that nature, so they wanted to keep a lot of that stuff out, which they were able to do. So you got to see his kind of dirty laundry behind the scenes, and then the same with Amber Heard, like a lot of her dirty laundry. But I think the unsealed documents hurt her a little bit more because of the things that it did leak, like the fact that she may have been involved in someone's homicide for a car crash, and the fact that she was a stripper in the past, and the fact that because remember, she had denied all these things. The fact that she had a history of being an abuser. Now, one thing that that a lot of the pro organizations that came to her defense, the first thing they'll tell you is that if someone has a history of domestic abuse, it's more likely they'll be recidivist. They'll do it again. The same thing with sexual assaults and those type of people. They have a high propensity to do it again. So the ones that came out for Amber that was saying that she was a victim and they had the open letter. Yeah. Those organizations, that's what I'm saying. Those organizations, they know for a fact what I'm saying is as accurate. Yeah. That if you have a history of domestic violence, you're more likely to reoffend. And she has a tremendous history of domestic violence. And I'll say this, and to anybody who may be watching this, if you really think about it, change the sex of the two parties in this story. Pretend Johnny Depp's a woman and pretend Amber Heard's a man, and have everything play out the same. Would there be any question about this story? He cut off her finger. He abused his ex-wife, right? He lied about giving the money away. He changed his story in the middle of the trial.
He told her he called her a baby and I meant to hit you. I didn't punch you, I hit you.
I didn't punch you, I hit you.
Yeah. Inclusive by then. I didn't punch you. No man is getting away with that. Let's be honest. No man is getting away with I didn't punch you, I hit you.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a case in 10, 15, 20 years time, 5 years time, that we're going to look back and thought, nah, they got it wrong, or they actually made the right choice?
I think it's easy to go back and say, it's the hindsight is 2020. But I think with everything that I know now and watching the case and going through it, I think it's clear that that we'll probably never know what really happened or who's really the bad guy. And that's why I keep saying, I think Amber Heard could have easily won this case. And I think it's all about perspective. I think she could have won this case easily. But I think she lost this case because of the reasons why I gave earlier. And I think, in 20 years, maybe there'll be something that comes out that makes you change my mind. But again, with the evidence that I have now and the witness testimony and the record that's now, making my decision, I just don't see it. Again, something could come out later, right? There can be a video or something come out later. But as of right now, it just isn't happening.
How can people find your channel and what are your socials?
I'm Nate the Lawyer. I'm on Twitter, but just find me. Just go to YouTube and type in Nate the Lawyer, and all my stuff will come up. And enjoy some of the videos. I'm Nate the Lawyer. I do legal education and do some, and also some I cover stories and try to find the legal angle or just interesting stories to try to just understand what's going on. So if you like that kind of stuff, I try to be fact based. But sometimes when you don't have the facts, you try to figure out what's going on. So, Nate the Lawyer, YouTube, that's me.